So every time I post a video, I get asked about this one little notion. This is my diagonal seam tape, and I thought it was about time we did a video on what it is and how to use it. So diagonal seam tape is probably one of my all-time favorite sewing notions. This has saved me countless hours. And so what it is basically tape that you can put on your machine, and it measures out that perfect 1/4 of an inch for you. So the center red line is of course where your needle is going to be. That's going to line up with your needle. The outside 2 lines are 1/4 inch away from that needle. So you can use this tape to sew directly diagonally from corner to corner on a quilt block. You can also use it to sew 1/4 of an inch away from center on both sides of a quilt block. So I'm going to show you how to use it and why I love this product so much. And of course, I'll put a link on where you can get it in the description box below the video. So here we are at my machine, and I always just fold a bit of tape over so that I can grab it easily when I need it next. But I'm just going to pull off a piece of my tape, and you just want to pull slowly because just like any tape, it can kind of come apart on you. And then I'm just going to figure out how long I want it. Now, I always make it come clear off the edge of my bed so that I have maximum amount of space. So I'm just going to grab a little pair of scissors and just trim off a piece. Using scissors to cut the tape is important because it will help keep the edge from fraying and catching on your fabric. So I think it lasts a little bit longer if you just cut it instead of tear it. Next, we're going to take our tape, and I'm going to line up this right side 1/4 of an inch seam line with the 1/4 of an inch seam line right here on my machine. I'm also going to make sure that the red line is kind of lined up with my needle. Once I get that in place, then I'll go ahead and straighten it out. And I'm using these lines down here to kind of make sure that it's straight all the way to down here. And I'll go ahead and just press that in place. And I'm going to just press that around that edge, and usually I'll go a little bit farther. I didn't quite make it as long this time. So you can see here that this line is right lined up with my 1/4 of an inch line right here, which means that hopefully this line is in line with my needle. And I make sure that I don't get it over the opening for my feed dog. You don't want to put tape over this opening right here because your feed dogs will catch on it. So I just make sure that it's pressed down really good, and then I take my scissors and I'm actually going to just cut a strip right here just really carefully. And this is so that I can move my plate off without disturbing the tape. So if I need to, I can take my plate off and then I just press that down right there so it doesn't get caught on my fabric. Now I can put my plate back, and if I need to move it or anything, I can. Now let's talk about sewing. So let's say that my instructions say to place these 2 fabrics right sides together. We're going to make a 1/2 square triangle with this. And so we need to sew from corner to corner. Normally it's going to tell you to draw a line from corner to corner. If you have like 100 pieces, that's going to be a lot of lines and it's going to take a lot of time. So instead of drawing lines on every single piece, I'm going to line up this corner with my needle. And I'll just lower the presser foot, and then I'm going to line up this corner with this red line, and I can sew straight down, just keeping this corner lined up with the red line. And here we have a perfect 1/2 square triangle with our line going corner to corner, and it's nice and straight. Now let's say that your instructions say that you need to sew a line 1/4 of an inch on either side of the center line. So normally they'll say draw a diagonal line, sew 1/4 of an inch on either side, or they'll have you draw 2 lines. Instead of doing that, you can line up your corner with this either outside or inside. It actually doesn't matter. 1/4 of an inch line. I tend to line it up on the outside. Put your presser foot down, and then you're going to keep your point lined up with this 1/4 of an inch line here, which means you're going to be stitching right here along the red line. And then you can turn it around and do the exact same thing. And I'll usually line up the edge of my presser foot because it is a 1/4 of an inch. That's kind of how I start. And voila, now we have 2 lines that are exactly 1/4 of an inch from our center line, which gives us 2 1/2 square triangles. So perfect. Now what if you're not doing that and you have something like this where you're snowballing the corner? I do the same thing. I'm not really paying attention to this one so much as I am to this one. So I'm going to line up the tip here with my needle and the tip here with this center red line, which is going to give us a nice stitch right down the diagonal of this square. And then you can press that back, and I always like to press this back and then I'll trim 1/4 inch away. But I find that if you press this first, I feel like the squares lie a little bit nicer. So that is 2 different ways to use this diagonal seam tape. As you can see, it's a very handy, and now I don't have to mark any of my blocks. And by letting it extend as far as I can off of my board, that gives me even more space. Now, if you have something that's really large, like a block that's really large, I will usually go ahead and draw the line on it if it's hanging off of my table past this line, just so I can be more accurate. But when you have blocks that are at least this big, you're good to go. All right, guys, so that is it. That is my diagonal seam tape. That's how you use it, and that is why I love it. I don't think I'll ever go back to drawing lines on my squares. I pretty much use this every time I quilt. I do draw lines on my video tutorials for you guys, kind of assuming that you don't have something like this, but honestly, I don't draw lines anymore. I only use my diagonal seam tape. Now, I did want to mention, if you don't have this specific tape, you can also use washi tape or even masking tape. You're just going to want to line one edge of that tape up with your needle, and then that way you'll have a nice straight line from your needle straight down your sewing machine bed. So just another little idea. Now, I thought it was kind of fun to do these short, quick tip videos. If you like that and you'd like to see more of these, make sure to thumbs up and subscribe. You can also leave a comment below letting me know if there's any other little notions or tips you would like some insight on. So thanks for joining me for today's video. I hope you enjoyed it, and I will see you next time.